Well, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. As you all know, we just got back from the Jerusalem trip, and we have so many pictures and videos. But actually, what I did is I compiled the select ones that I chose. I compiled it into a narrative, so that hopefully, when we're done here, we would be moved and be changed. So Lord, we come before you, before this presentation, Lord, to ask that you guide us as we remember the places that you've been, so that after today's presentation, that our relationship with you would be closer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, in this presentation, you're going to be hearing some video clips of the noises of the bus and everything. I wanted to bring us to the experience that my wife and I experienced as close as possible. You know, I just didn't want to show pictures and all that. I wanted to capture the sounds and everything. So hopefully you will enjoy it. First off, this is our tour guide. His name is Rizek Nazi, but he wanted to be called Abu George. He is a descendant of the original members of the Antioch church, the one that's in the book of Acts. Yeah, he is a descendant of one of the original members. And he is born. He was born in Bethlehem. He's from Bethlehem and speaks Aramaic. Went to Hebrew University, so he's pretty knowledgeable. And I'm going to be incorporating some things that you may not have heard before. It's a perspective from a Jew that was born in Bethlehem. And so the first that I'm going to show is, oops. What happened here? Something happened here. It's not acting. Well, I was going to show the video for the actual cave where the shepherds were staying. For some reason, it's not showing up. But this is actually the actual site of the cave where the shepherds were when the angel announced that Jesus Christ was born. And it's only about a couple of miles away from, this is now the nativity site where Jesus Christ was born. But you cannot tell it because you know what happens. They build shrines over it. And the interesting part about this is when you enter, they made the door pretty low so that when you enter, you're forced to bow down. Yeah, so that's how they did it. And then this is actually where Jesus Christ was born. You cannot tell because they already put embellishments and everything. But if you put your hand in there, you can actually feel the ground where he was supposed to be born. Right there in Bethlehem. And this is supposed to be his manger right there. But then again, it's so embellished that you cannot even tell. And there are so many people and there are so many temples. You know, so this is where Jesus Christ was born. And this is Bethlehem today. I don't know where. See, it's modern now, and you can see newer buildings. It has changed so much since the time that Jesus Christ was born. You know, all these high-rise buildings, and you also have not so good parts. So this is why we're riding the bus, and you can see this is Bethlehem, where Jesus Christ was born. This is Bethlehem today. I wonder what that red spot is. That thing is doing. And then Jesus Christ grew up in Nazareth. This is Nazareth today. When Jesus was born, there were only about 250 people in Nazareth. But now, there's about 77,000, 78,000 people in Nazareth today. And so when Jesus Christ was about 30 years old, he went to see John the Baptist. And he was baptized here. Actually, these two churches there is the actual site, but that's beyond the border to the PLO, or the Palestine side, and so you cannot go through. So what they did is they made a diversion so that people can come here and do their rebaptism and all that. So after Jesus was baptized, he was led to the wilderness to be tempted. And so this is part on our way to Jericho. Abu George said these are parts of the wilderness wherein Jesus stayed for 40 days. It's pretty barren, and it was hot that day. So maybe, I don't know what time of year, but it was pretty hot. And so here is Abu George describing about the temptation in some clip.
Top. And in the center of the mountain we can see a monastery, which the first phase of that monastery was built in the 6th century. What we can see today, it's 1997. It's belonged to the Greek Orthodox denomination, following the tradition. Under the white dome, Jesus stood on a rock and he was tempted by the demon. Jesus was tempted 3 times. One of them in the wilderness, one of them in the temple, and
Here's another picture of that mountain where he was, traditionally was tempted by the devil. And you're probably wondering what this tree is right here. Abu George brought up the fact that, John the Baptist also stayed around this wilderness, when he was preparing the way for the Lord. And he brought up the fact that, what was he eating? Locust and honey, right? But according to their tradition, he was actually eating the fruits of this tree. It's like a pea, and it's a source of protein and all that. Anyone can guess what the name of this tree is? It's called honey locust tree, and they're all over the place. They're all over the place. You can find it all over the place. So I don't know. It's their tradition. You can take it for what it is. But those are tidbits that I didn't know before. So after he was tempted, he returned to the areas of Galilee. And so the next clip that I'm going to show you is our group exclusively when we sailed in the Sea of Galilee. And they actually played the national anthem for us and all that. And you can see it. I hope you can experience it with us like the way we had it, part of it. And we also had communion there in the Sea of Galilee. Sailing the Sea of Galilee.
fresh face and
Not
water.
bad. I hope I can bring you to where
Approximately 620 feet below sea level, and we're selling more.
And so when he headed to the area of Galilee, I didn't realize Galilee is the Hebrew word for Galilee is Galil HaGoyim. Galil HaGoyim. And the meaning of Galilee is what? Anyone can guess? Region of the Gentiles. Galil HaGoyim. But then, you know, the Gospels say that Jesus returned to Nazareth, where he went into a synagogue, and there he delivered his one-passage sermon. Remember when they handed the book of Isaiah to him, and then he said, you know, today this scripture is fulfilled in your ears. And then somebody else said, oh, isn't this the son of the carpenter and all that? And so he answered back, and they didn't like his answer. So they grabbed hold of him, and they were going to throw him in the cliff. And so I'm going to show you a video clip where we were headed that way.
First tradition, the Greek Orthodox, the second one following the Catholics. From here we can see like the Catholic Church. In the foot of the mountain there is 3 Arab villages. And we're driving towards Mount Precipice to see the city of Nazareth. And that's the cliff from where they were trying to throw Jesus. When he entered the synagogue and they rejected him in the synagogue. We're going to see that. We're going to speak about that event.
We actually went on top of it, and this is how it looks like. And you can see this is the Valley of Jezreel down there. Tim Sitterly was saying this were the playgrounds of Jesus Christ. And that's supposed to be one of the mountains, so the mountains of Transfiguration. And that's where they were going to throw him, the peak right there. And here's Nazareth right there. So you can see the entire area. Nazareth, the Valley of Jezreel, where some people say that's what Revelation was talking about. You know, Armageddon place. And so Jesus escaped from the crowd. He passed through it, according to the gospel. He passed through the crowd that were trying to throw him away. But in here you can actually see a description saying he actually jumped into the cliff unharmed. But I mean, that's tradition again. And so when he escaped, he went to Capernaum. And so we can see the ruins of Capernaum here. These are actually the ruins of some of the ruins left. Jesus Christ spent a lot of time teaching here. He spent most of his time teaching in the northern part of Galilee. So he went to Capernaum, and here's part of a synagogue where he used to teach and cast out demons and perform miracles, other sorts of miracles. And I also found out, according to Abu George, that during this time, Jesus was not the only one that was claiming to be the Messiah. There were a lot of people going around claiming to be the Messiah and performing miracles as well. But thousands followed Jesus Christ. Why? What was the difference? Because he spoke with authority. Jesus Christ spoke with authority. The others, the other messiahs, the other rabbis, they were just referencing, you know, so-and-so said this prophet said this. But when Jesus Christ spoke, he said, you know, others say this, but I say. And when he cast out demons, he just said, in my authority, go out, be cast out. He spoke with authority. That's the main difference between Jesus Christ. And, I didn't realize there were other messiahs performing miracles as well. But he had thousands of followers. This is still in Capernaum. That's the house of Peter's mother-in-law. Pretty neat, right? No, that's not it. That's just one of the buildings they built over it. The actual ruins are underneath. Yeah, in Capernaum. And then he also went to the mountain of the Beatitudes. And this is probably one of the areas where he taught. Or probably here. Probably where he fed the 5,000. Right here. And when we were here, Abu George read one of the Beatitudes, which is actually Matthew 5, verse 10, where it said, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And he pointed out that for us here in the United States, we probably kind of just read through this. But he said that in the Arab world, this is a reality. A lot of Christians are being killed for their faith. He actually related a story which just happened like a month ago, where 11 to 13-year-old boys were escaping to Israel because they wanted to leave the Muslim religion. And they were seen on TV being shot and killed. And you can see their faces beaming and shouting, saying, "Jesus, I'm coming to you." So it's a reality. It kind of just changed my perspective of here we are kind of, we're in our comfort zones and we can't really realize what it is, what's going on out there. So he also went to, I didn't realize that they also have a Filipino contingent there, and they left a monument in the Mount of Beatitudes, right there. And he also went to places like Magdala. This is actually one of the synagogues where Jesus taught. Probably stood right there and preached. This is in Magdala. This is an actual ruin. This is an A site. And he also went out to the outskirts of the temple in Jerusalem. This is Bethesda. This is not the actual site where the pools are. These are ruins from the Crusades time. The actual pools of Siloam are underneath these ruins, right here in Bethesda. And here's a monastery right here too. I'm going to show here pretty soon. I don't know who that guy is. But yeah, it's underneath these ruins. The actual pools of Bethesda are underneath this. And in this monastery, they let in groups of, they let it in by groups. And what they do is some of them are singing, sometimes we can hear them pretty loud singing. And then when we went in there, all 30 of us, all we did was we sang Amazing Grace in a low volume. And it was pretty moving. You can hear the reverberation and everything, Amazing Grace. And the people watching and waiting outside actually said when we were going out, they said, "Wow, that was awesome." So that was an experience. What I also didn't realize was Jesus Christ spent some time with the Essenes. These are the religious conservatives, so to speak, of that time, who stayed away from the Pharisees and scribes. And these are one of their ruins, close to the Dead Sea, the Essenes. You can see the ritual baths that they have. And you can also see the caves where they probably got the Dead Sea Scrolls. One of the caves. And this is an interesting one. One of the caves, there's a wild goat and a kid. Actually, we gave a picture to Abu George because he said that in his experience of doing touring, it's the first time he saw a goat inside the cave there. Yeah, so he spent some time with the Essenes. And then when the time has come, he decided to go back to Jerusalem. And then he passed by Bethany. And so I'll let
public
Abu
transportation.
George.
So this is Al-Azariya. Now, why do we call it Al-Azariya? Ancient Bethany, and that will remind us with the famous story of Lazarus. Jesus raised Lazarus from death. Now, Al-Azariya. So Al-Azariya, it is a city followed the name of Lazarus. Of course, Lazarus is also mentioned in Quran.
That's Bethany now. Of course, it looked much different when Jesus Christ passed by it. And then he passed by the foot of the Mount of Olives, and then he entered Jerusalem from the east gate. It's called the King's Gate. And this is the road right there, where he made a triumphal entry. Remember Palm Sunday? This is it right here. The road that he walked through. And after several days, many things happened. You know, remember the temple and all that. And then he told some of his disciples to prepare the room, the upper room for the Last Supper. And this is what it looks like now. It's been embellished. And this is a district of the Essenes. Tradition is that this is a house of one of the Essenes. And, you know, you can see there's a sign up there, and my wife took a close-up of it and explaining what it is. Right there, the upper room. And this is the inside now. This is where the Last Supper, parts of it actually happened. This is also where the tongues of fire, remember when it landed on the apostles and they spoke in different tongues? It's this place right here, the upper room. And so after supper, they went to the Garden of Gethsemane. So we were walking all the way on the perimeter, and you can see there are trees that there are olive trees that date all the way back to the time of Jesus. So yeah, you'll see a lot of olive trees there. And we were walking towards the entrance, but this is the Garden of Gethsemane. Right there. Jesus Christ is probably being weighed down by this time. He knew what was going to happen. And so, yeah, you can see some trees that are really huge. They date back to the time of Jesus, right there. There's one there. The Garden of Gethsemane. Here's what it looks like on the inside. And then Jesus took James, Peter, and John, right? And he prayed. He prayed right at this spot right here. You know, they built another temple over around it. But this is where Jesus Christ started to shed his blood. Started sweating his blood. It's where he said, you know, if possible, Father, take this cup away from me. But then his final words were what? Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. This was the attitude of the one who created everything. Not my will, but your will be done. And it's interesting because if you go to the internet today and you hear a lot of comments saying, people just go to religion and they get brainwashed. Why can't you just think for yourself? Be free. What an opposite from the maker of all things saying, your will be done. Not my will, but your will be done. What a night. And of course, the other disciples, they were so tired and they just slept. Now here's the temple or the building that was built over it, inside that place. Of course, the other disciples, they were so tired they just slept. They were just sleeping. So after this is basically Gethsemane was where Jesus Christ was captured. And he was brought over to the palace of Caiaphas. Right there. That's the palace of Caiaphas. And in there they charged him for claiming to be the Messiah. That was the charge when he was brought over to Caiaphas. Here's another picture view for the palace of Caiaphas. But so they kept Jesus there overnight. But what I didn't realize was there was a dungeon in the palace. And tradition says that it's that dungeon where they kept Jesus overnight. We actually went inside that dungeon. Of course, when Jesus was in there were no lights. No lights. What a sobering. Once you're there, it's a sobering experience. And then the next day, they brought him over to Pilate, right? And then Pilate found out that he was a Galilean, so he sent him over to Herod. Then Herod questioned him and he said, no, he's not under my jurisdiction. He sent him back to Pilate. Now before this happened, Pilate and Herod were bitter enemies. But after this happened, they became good friends. Isn't it interesting when Jesus is involved, there is reconciliation. And so the next piece right here is the actual ground where Jesus stood when he was being tried by Pilate. This is the actual ground. It's underground now, but this is the actual ground when Pilate tried him. And Pilate actually tried to set him free. He didn't want him to be executed. At first, he scourged him. This is where Jesus was scourged. He scourged him like 39 times to appease the Jews. And then a thought came to his mind where he said, well, if I bring out Barabbas, the most hated person in Jerusalem at that time, maybe if I offer Barabbas and say, if I can let Jesus go, or you can choose. And according to tradition, according to Abu George, he said that it was at this time when God the Father authorized Pilate to make the exchange from a sinner that's bound for the cross. He exchanged it for Jesus Christ. And the following clips, here was Abu George explaining it. Parts
in case that they miscount one of them.
The actual ground that Jesus stood.
So Jesus was scourged and he was condemned to death. And we can see another hand that Pontius Pilate was trying to save the life of Jesus. Let me bring for them the worst man in Jerusalem in that time. A thief, a thug, everyone afraid. He threatened everyone. They were so happy when we decided to capture him and to put him in the in the penalty of death. The father say to Barabbas, no, you are free to go. I'm gonna send my son in your. And Barabbas did not figure that. And Jesus was looking at him. Even he didn't have to look back to Jesus and say, thank you for doing that. God gave us the blessing that we don't deserve without our knowledge, and it stayed with us. And that's Barabbas. Put your hands on the ground. If you want to take off your shoes and to walk on dirt, do that.
So that's
See
what we
the
did.
feeling. Take off your shoes and take off your
Took off our
socks.
shoes,
Touch the ground with your
walked
feet
on the
and
actual
walk over
ground
there.
where Jesus walked.
Imagine the
Close
feeling.
our eyes.
Don't say nothing, keep it inside.
And you could feel, and you can just imagine what he went through. You know, he was already scourged. And the cross actually is just a patibulum. It's like a cross beam tied behind his back. He was doing this. He was walking, and then we went outside the shrine that they built, and then we actually walked what they call the Via Dolorosa, or the way of the cross. And just imagine Jesus Christ this way, with the beam on his neck like this. And tradition says he stumbled 3 times. Can you imagine if you stumble forward? You can't even put your hand there straight. And then somebody asked, yeah, but Simon carried his cross. I said, yes, the way he did it is Simon stayed here like this and helped him carry that patibulum all the way. And we walked that route to the traditional Golgotha, because there are 2 sites that have compelling evidence that these are the actual site. It took us a good 30, 45 minutes, walking pretty fast through all the crowds and narrow. And imagine, you know, the passion is pretty mild, the depiction, because Jesus Christ was doing this all scourged, tired, and totally naked. And everybody watching. It was total humiliation. And probably took him hours to go up there. And so now this is the Golgotha. You can't even tell, because they built, you know, a shrine over it, and you see, yeah, you can't even tell the mountain, the rock over it. And that you see this slab over here. It's supposed to be where they laid him down and they put the nails. What it is you have this patibulum, they lay you down, they'll put the nails, and then they'll raise this patibulum into that wood that's already there, the stipe, and then they, you know, and right near this is what they call the Holy Sepulchre as well. And then there's another site that was discovered in the 1800s, which is another Golgotha, and it's compelling as well. Here, you can see it looks like a skull, but the tour guide there, because he gave us to a different tour guide, was saying Jesus Christ was not crucified on top, but actually on a street nearby, because that's how Roman crucifixion was before. It was on the side of the road, where people can look at you and people will remember, and you will be humiliated to the max. And there's, I don't know, some tradition, which is not in the Bible, but there, Abu George said that the Golgotha was the place where, in Genesis, when God took the earth and formed Adam, is right there in Golgotha. And so when Jesus Christ died and shed his blood, it spilled on the ground. And so it means that Adam was covered. So, I mean, those are interesting tidbits. But that's Golgotha, the other Golgotha. And then the other tomb site. Well, I want to digress, by the way. This is a Roman latrine. It's a Roman restroom. We took a picture of it when we went to Beth Shean. The reason I bring this out is, remember in Matthew 27 verse 34, when Jesus Christ was, what happens here is when a soldier comes here, he sits in between here, and he has a backpack with him, and in the backpack he has a stick with a sponge. So he does his thing here, and then there's free-flowing liquid here, water flowing. So he does his thing, and then he takes this stick and sponge, dips it in here, cleans himself up, and then dips it back here to clean up the sponge and the stick. But if you remember, Matthew 27, when Jesus was thirsty, somebody gave him a drink. And according to tradition, one of the soldiers took the stick and the sponge, dipped it in wine and gall, gave it to Jesus. See, the thing was, they wanted to humiliate Jesus that low. That's how the humiliation. I mean, even though he's equal to God, he lowered himself, became one with no reputation. So just to digress, anyway, that's tradition. So, I mean, it's not in the Bible. That's how their perspective. And so this is one of the alternate tombs. I actually like this better because you can see it as a tomb. Not the other one, it's all like buildings, and then you enter another room which is so packed, and then there's a curtain, and then you look inside there, and both sites have compelling evidence that they are the right ones. And we actually were asking why were there two? Maybe because God wanted to avoid what was happening like on the first site. People were kissing the stones, and they were kissing images and all that. So yeah, we entered that tomb actually. And, that's what it is inside. The common thing between the two tombs is they were both empty. That's the main thing. They were both empty. And so, in Matthew 28, verse 7, remember after Jesus Christ resurrected, an angel appeared to the women, right? And he told them to go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead, and behold, he is going before you into Galilee. There you will see him. I have told you. This is the place, right here. Remember when Peter and 5 other disciples were out fishing, and they looked at the shore, and Jesus was already there cooking food for them. This is the actual rock where he sat down. Of course, this rock extends all the way outside this building that they made. And it's pretty sobering to just sit down there and realize that thousands of years ago, the first glorified man was there. Here's the shore of Galilee, right there. And as you can see, that's the continuation of that rock where Jesus was sitting down, and the disciples, see, and there, it goes inside the building. That's where Jesus was. And what I didn't realize was this was also the same spot where Jesus called Peter and Andrew first, when he said, "Come, I will make you fishers of men." Same spot. This is also the same spot where he asked Peter 3 times, "Peter, do you love me?" And 3 times. Remember, Peter betrayed him 3 times. This is also where he was reinstated back to being a shepherd. So we do have evidence that Jesus Christ is alive today. He is alive. So as a final thing here, slide, is I took a scan of Jerusalem from the porch at Caiaphas Palace. You can see there's a scan of Jerusalem. That's the view of Jerusalem there. And what I wanted to focus on actually was that spot right there. See that pointed place right there? That's where Jesus Christ ascended to heaven. That's when his disciples saw him go up to heaven. And then the angel said, "Hey, what are you guys looking up? He's going to come back in the same manner. One of these days, Jesus Christ's foot is going to be standing right there. And this is when he's going to make the regeneration of all things, like we studied in Romans 8, right? All creation is groaning right now until that day when Jesus Christ will set his foot right there. You know, it's really interesting that of all the entire population of Israel, only 1% are Christians. And they are all concentrated in Nazareth. But even so, Jesus continues to bless them financially. You know, the number one industry in Israel is tourism. Because all people throughout the world want to go there and see where Jesus Christ walked, where he taught. And who are reaping the benefits financially? Israel. This is the God that we worship. He keeps on giving and giving and giving because we have a God who is good all the time. Amen?